What's up? So before we get cracking today, please tap that little subscribe button, tap that little like button. I promise it's going to be good. And if it's not, you can always go back and unlike, unsubscribe, and leave me some comments below about how much my content sucks. And I'll make some drastic life changes just for you. Anyway, today we are going to discuss lagging body parts and what the hell you do about them. And for anybody that is new here or new to this series, basically as part of my morning routine, every single morning I answer some questions on my app's forum. And one, I really like it because as much as I like putting out content that hopefully helps thousands of people, I do miss that little bit of one-on-one touch I had when I used to just work, obviously, with clients one-on-one on person. And this gives me that opportunity. And so it's nice because I leave an audio reply on those forums, which is as much for you as it is for me. Because as you guys know, I'm incapable of giving a short answer in an attempt to give complete, accurate, full answers. I just can't tend to keep on going. So anyway, because I can't write anything short or record anything short, that's a good help for me. And so as an expansion off of that, the questions are always great. I always enjoy them. And then the nice part as well, too, is it gives me obviously topics of interest that you people are concerned about. Normal people. I'm not normal. How many people's entire job is just talking about muscles and shit? So it gives me a little bit of a temperature check and a feel on what do you guys actually want to know more about. And so I had a question from a member that was basically asking about, what to do about lagging body parts. And so again, this video is, if you're looking for an exact written out template of how to bring up your biceps, this isn't it. If it was just as simple as on paper stuff, you wouldn't have to listen to anybody talk or watch any videos. You could just read a list of exercises and everyone would have huge body parts and no one would be lagging anything. I like to address, concepts, principles, some things that hopefully 1,000 different people can hear and apply 1,000 different ways. And so the cool part about this question that I liked is the person was basically, how do you get over the mental hurdle of if you're prioritizing a body part? I've said this before, you generally have to deprioritize something else. The reality is the longer you're doing this, the harder you train, the more recovery becomes the missing piece of the equation. So I like to say the simple version, because I'm not that smart to understand things, is you got this recovery pie. You've only got so much to go around. And a lot of people, when they're trying to bring up lagging body parts, they just keep adding more on top, acting like it's just about training and the recovery is not ever a limiting factor. And really what you're doing is you can't just say, okay, well, I'm going to keep training legs exactly the same and I want bigger arms, so I'm just going to train biceps 5, 6, 7 times a week. The reality is it's just going to, who the hell knows what, probably overtrain your biceps. You won't be able to recover. They'll actually get smaller. So anyway, if the notion of there's only so much pie to go around, you got to take some pie away from some body part, a strong body part, to give more opportunity for something else to grow. And again, hopefully the opportunity is more stimulus needed than you need more recovery for a given body part, which I'll get into. But the other idea, so again, that was kind of the question, is how do I go about deprioritizing strong body parts? Because one, who doesn't like having something that looks good? Who doesn't want that thing to ultimately look bigger? And normally, strong body parts are the most fun to train. Sometimes they are actually physically the strongest. You can lift some big numbers, but lots of times they feel the best. They're fun to train. You like the way they look when they're huge. And so I'll give a couple examples on this to realize, not everyone's goal is to have a perfect physique. This person actually asked, I'd given the example before of good buddy Flex Lewis. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. He's an okay bodybuilder. But obviously his goal from early on, I think he knew in himself and had other good people around him that saw his potential to be Mr. Olympia. And so you can really realize him more than almost anyone else. His goal is an end result physique, right? He wants his physique to look a very specific way for a very specific result. And literally his physique is one of his top goals. Whereas normal people, it might be more, I enjoy training, I like the feeling of training, I like the way this part looks, but he is literally trying to fit an outside standard of physical appearance. Judges will look at his physique, and he knows that there's this huge balance component. So coming out of being an amateur, I don't remember the exact year, it might have been his first year out of being an amateur. If you look back at pictures, his legs are just massive, which is awesome. And he even said he just loved training legs, had massive legs, but they really, really overpowered his upper body. So he made a tough decision. He took an entire year off of training to try and balance out. That's that whole recovery pie. He could have kept training him. He maybe could have trained him a little bit less, a little bit of volume, but he wanted a drastic difference. I really think people can put on, it's like this kind of global thing. Your body's capable of putting on X amount of pounds of muscle in a year. Let's say it's 10 pounds. You're early in your stages. You can put on 10 pounds of muscle in a year. I think he had the choice of either, cutting back on his legs a little bit, maybe put on 3 or 4 pounds to his legs, put on 6 pounds or so to his upper body, or he could put all 10 pounds on his upper body, maybe even lose a little bit of size in his legs, and come out the end of the year with a much more balanced physique. And so he did that, and as an end result, I think it worked out pretty well for him. Obviously, he's got, I don't even remember how many, 7 to 12 Olympias. I can't count, so that's why I don't remember. But anyway, so when I give that example, some people like, this person was specifically like, man, I don't want to give up training my body part. It's fun. And so I use the example of myself to maybe find some balance is, I pretty early on didn't think I wanted to compete in bodybuilding, just because again, maybe it's an excuse. Obviously, there's a component of this, but I'm in a pretty well-educated professional opinion at this point in time. I don't have the genetics to be Mr. Olympia. And so, I just realized, obviously, I didn't have any desire to obviously make a career out of being a professional bodybuilder. And so really I started competing. I got talked into doing a show with a client pretty late in the game for bodybuilding standards. My first show, I was 28. And I just got talked into it basically of well, it'll just make me a better trainer. Like, why not go through the experience? Why not see if I'm capable of doing all the things that I want other people to do? And honestly, I really, really enjoyed it. And, so ended up doing 6 shows. And the whole way through, feedback was pretty clear. Similar thing is my legs are pretty damn good. I've never had a judge tell me I need to work on my leg size. It was always just bring up your upper body, bring up your upper body. And so I was kind of confronted with the same thing. And it really, this all comes down to the same thing for trainers, the same thing for everybody else, is you need to be able to manage expectations. That's the most important job of a trainer. And that's the most important job as an individual training yourself, is managing your expectations of your outcomes. So that way you're not disappointed. You got to be realistic with what's going to occur. And so I really thought about it for a while. I was like, do I want to be the best on-stage bodybuilder that I'm capable of being? Which I joke, I'm a wildly mediocre bodybuilder. And so I would have been slightly more wildly mediocre had I ever maybe just completely taken off of leg training, even if it was just for a few months or something, and let my upper body come up. But I decided I love training. I like training way more than competing. I like the feeling of training and working out and progressing and beating the shit out of yourself. And so honestly, I would just be depressed if I couldn't train legs. So at best, I deprioritized them a teeny bit. I mean, sometimes I'd train them every 8-9 days. I think was the best I ever made it. Kept volume a little bit lower. And if you look at my start, my first show to my last show, my upper body balance definitely improved compared to my lower body, but I was never really completely balanced. My upper body really never had the size it needed. But I managed my expectation. Again, like I said, 2018, I decided, I love competing, but, I'm going to prioritize some other stuff, try and be more focused on being a husband and a parent and a trainer and an educator, more so than just trying to be, like I said, just a very mediocre, slightly better mediocre bodybuilder. So I say that everyone needs to make those decisions for themselves, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's 100% up to you. So realize that is it having a perfectly balanced physique by bodybuilding standards your goal, or is having people train, again, for a lot more reasons than just the end result. There's some people that just train and they know, my sleep is shit right now, my food's okay. So they know they're not going to make crazy results, but they just train because it keeps them from murdering people, right? It keeps them just from being angry and grumpy. I mean, that's the main reason I train is it's an outlet. I mean, for mental reasons, much more than physical reasons at this point in time. So most people need to do that. Take some time, kind of go through, okay, well, what are really my end goals? And having this balance of, yes, most people want to look a certain way, but a lot of people have other things they love as well too. So some of that is really walk through, what's the most important. And then from there, kind of getting into some nuts and bolts of, okay, well, what do you actually do if you want to prioritize a body part? How do you get over the hurdle of this person then said, I get into the gym and I'm just F it, I'm going to train this body part. It's fun, I'm strong, whatever it is. And so really, if you actually really say, okay, well, I really do want to improve balance, I always say is you need to have somebody tell you what to do. And this could be someone else or it could be yourself. Whereas a lot of times people pay a professional just so they have something written down and something to do and some accountability. So it's, okay, well, I paid for this, I'm going to follow it type deal. And I always said whenever I contest prepped, I always did my own stuff. But for me to start a diet, I always had to write it down. Some of it was for all right, when it's new, how many grams of whatever at this meal and all that, obviously to know that I was being accurate. But for the most part, it was a mental thing. As soon as I wrote it down and I'm looking at it on the paper, it's okay, here's the plan, I'm going to follow the plan. It's not about me anymore, it's about the plan. And obviously prepping yourself, anyone that's done that, it's a little tough, obviously, when you're making decisions, but make decisions when you're not emotional, you're not hungry, you're not angry. And so I say the same thing. If you're thinking about prioritizing a body part, realize there's a whole scope of things in between the example I gave for myself and what Flex did. Do you have to take a year off? I don't know. Maybe it depends on your goal. Do you want to just deprioritize it a little bit like I did? Maybe less frequency every 8 to 9 days, whatever your strong body part is, and make a little bit better progress in balancing that way? Or even say just have a period of time. I always tell people a training decision, a split decision, is not a lifelong decision. You know, so break it 6 weeks at a time. Here's my start. Here's my end. I'm not going to train this strong body part for this period of time. And then basically at the end, you know, you're not going to have this massive change in your physique by 6 weeks, but at 6 weeks of not training a strong body part and prioritizing a lagging body part, you should notice a difference. And so if that's the case, then you can reevaluate to say, okay, well, was this worth it? Was this change in my physique worth me having to suffer not training the thing that I think is fun? And if it is, repeat for another 6 weeks, repeat for another 6 weeks. And maybe you'll make it to a year and have a balanced physique, or you go 6 weeks and be like, oh no, that sucked. Maybe I'm a little bit more balanced, but I miss training legs. I miss training whatever it is. And then just start over. So, you know, if you need that outside accountability to get over it, you could always pay someone, pay a qualified trainer, or, you know, pay yourself. Just write stuff down. Some of it's not rocket science. You know, some of it's not rocket science to say, okay, well, here's this and here's that. And then again, it's written on paper and it's accountability. And then lastly, I want to go over a teeny bit of nuts and bolts. Again, this isn't really the post for this, but someone says, okay, I got all that. Thanks mentally, okay, emotionally, blah, blah. Thanks, Joe. I didn't really need any of that. Well, hopefully somebody needed that. And then really from there, you know, what do you want to do? And I always say the first step is address the issue. You know, so some of it's obvious. Is it stimulus or recovery? Everyone always thinks more is the issue. I need more training, more this, more that. And look at some obvious stuff. Is your recovery shit? I mean, if you're making progress overall, so if you've been putting on 10 pounds a year and it's just not going into balanced places, odds are recovery is fine. Although look where you're programming stuff. So sometimes is it lack of stimulus, meaning, you know, your biceps are shit and the only time you train them is at the end of a pool day. Or the only time you train arms is after leg day, you feel like you got hit by a truck or something. So do just take a minute to look at some obvious stuff. If you're making progress, you're putting on tissue, odds are it's maybe not recovery. You know, so is it really just then, you know, maybe a lack of stimulus? So again, if you're looking at stimulus, you know, the very first thing I look at, even before I get into programming, is the quality of what you're doing. And quality is made up of execution and effort. Because I make a joke, that's the funny joke I've made before. I think it's funny because it's got poop in it. But if the one rep of what you're doing between your form and then how far you're willing to take things, again, whether it's, you know, 5 reps short of where you need to be, you know, defining that one rep, if what you're doing is shit, right? Your execution is shit, your effort is shit for that lagging body part, and you just start addressing more first. So you're like, all right, this is lagging. I need to have more frequency. I need to have more volume. I need whatever. I need to do doubles, all that kind of stuff. Just do the math on that. So you're taking shit, and then you're just going to add more shit, and you're just going to add shit until you just got a big steaming pile of shit, and that will never lead to a better body part. So address your execution and effort. And I always do this with people too, to realize, like, well, how do I know if it's execution? Well, when you train your best body part, say, what is it? Think about it right now. How does it feel when you train it? Do you have a hard time feeling it on given exercises? You know, do you have a hard time feeling it start to finish on different exercises? Do you have a hard time feeling it at the beginning and the end ranges of motion? Are you strong on it? So realize that all those things I just listed have nothing to do with what's written on paper. It has everything to do with this kind of potentially a little quantitative, but mostly qualitative thing of feel. So if that's really a huge difference between that, which your strong body part, now think about all those same things with your lagging body part. And most people think, I don't feel it at all. I have a hard time feeling my chest. I have a hard time feeling this. My shoulders do more. Realize that's an indication that form needs to be improved first. And then again, sometimes with legs, it's like some people can train hard on biceps, in which case I'm just letting you know right now, that's not actually hard training. And some people lack the actual effort where again, oh, I want to start up in the frequency of my legs, where in reality is you've got 9 reps in reserve, which I don't think too many people program that. You're 9 reps short of where you need to be. So address those somewhat obvious things first. But if it was so obvious, I wouldn't see people all the time just adding more of something that's just shit and expecting a different outcome. You know, then from there, you can start to look at other stuff. So again, let's say you address that. It's good. It's still not progressing the way that you want it. You know, then you can start to move around that recovery pie, add more stimulus somewhere. So it could be a matter of, even before you go to frequency, I would still look at, again, the example I started to get into with where it's programmed. Is it after a huge body part? Again, as you train in biceps, you know, the day after legs, and you just feel like you got hit by a truck and your performance is shit? Is it at the end of a body part? So again, this is the whole thing where you get into, you know, people say as a beginner, as an intermediate, you have to do a half body, total body, push, pull, lower. I think it's that while there's better on paper to start, and it's not a bad idea to do, just realize, obviously, no one can tell you when or when not to improve your balance. I think that's an idiotic notion. People say, well, do this for 10 years. You don't have to follow push-pull over for 10 years, and then after 10 years of that have just complete garbage arms. I can speak from experience. You can start to prioritize them beforehand. And again, 10 pounds of muscle is going to go on one way or the other if you're doing everything right. Might as well prioritize where it goes on. So again, if your biceps are garbage and the only time you've ever trained them is after you've done back, after you've done rear delts, and then you just do one exercise at the end of a pull day, well, before you do more frequency, maybe just have this idea of giving them a fresh start, putting them at the beginning of the workout, whatever it is, again, before you address even something like frequency. And then from there, if there's not obvious things like that, then look at frequency. So again, how often can I recover from them? And I always say, build your split around that lagging body part. So again, it doesn't have to be, people are like, how many times a week? I don't know. So if it takes you 3 days to recover from a body part, it could be more frequent. If it takes 4, if it takes 5, that's your split. Every 4 or 5 days you train whatever that lagging body part is that's as quick as you can recover from it. So build your split around your lagging body parts and then just fill in the rest from there. So that's pretty much it, guys. I mean, like I said, hopefully that's a little bit of a decent balance of actually working through one. First and foremost, always manage expectations. Take some time to think about what outcome you actually want to have happen. How important is that outcome to you? And program and prioritize off of that. And then from there, hopefully still giving you guys a little bit of idea of some nuts and bolts of how I would actually go about addressing those lagging body parts with programming. And again, some of this is, well, why are we having this whole conversation? Why talk about this stuff? Again, if it was easy of just reading stuff off a piece of paper, everyone says, oh, don't reinvent the wheel, blah, blah, that kind of stuff. It's like, well, everyone can just look at the exact split that Dorian followed, that Ronnie Coleman followed, and if it were that easy, you could just basically copy that exact thing and look like Dorian and look like Ronnie. But again, and most people know there's a little bit outside of that. Again, there's obviously a genetic component, a drug component. I'm not dismissing any of that, obviously. But a lot of it is the way they did those things, much more than the exact things that they did. So if the video helped, let me know. Give me some feedback down below. You know, maybe even give me some topics you want to hear about next. And if you've got a long-ass question you want answered, then go ahead and get on my app, get on my forum. It's cheap as hell, and I will give you a nice, long, specific answer, as many as your little heart desires to ask. And yes, I do answer them personally. So as always, if you haven't tapped it at the beginning, please go down and give it a little tappity-tap to that subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up, and until the next one,